It's common for cities and states to provide tax breaks and exemptions in the hope of luring business and jobs. But in some places, there's growing pushback. Amazon in New York City is the most high-profile case recently. What's less known are big breaks given in some states to traditional industries that don't get quite as much buzz. Welcome to Louisiana. Our economics correspondent Paul Solman visited there recently as part of our regular series, Making Sense.
I think there's one thing that we can agree on as citizens of Louisiana. Things are not great.
One of YouTube's unlikelier hits, a slideshow asking, how can it be that a state so rich in natural resources can also be
bottom of the list in all the important categories when it comes to life indicators?
One answer, claims the advocacy group Together Louisiana, subsidies. Tax breaks state and local governments give companies to set up shop or stay in the state. The national average of tax breaks, $291 per resident. Louisiana?
We are spending $2,857 per capita in corporate subsidies.
80% in the form of industrial tax exemptions, in which the state's industries, mostly petrochemical, are freed from the local property taxes that fund services like police, parks, and public schools.
I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Commerce and Industry.
For 80-plus years, a state board has approved nearly all of these tax breaks.
All in favor of approving these in globo, indicate with an aye.
100% exemption for 10 years.
Motion carries.
Problem is, the local counties, called parishes in Louisiana, don't get the taxes the companies would otherwise pay.
They're being given billions of dollars in this parish alone in incentives every year, billions.
In southwest Louisiana's Calcasieu Parish, environmentalist Mike Tritico showed us a coal-fired power plant built in the 1950s. That's a huge plant.
It is a huge plant. It produces a lot of electricity and it gets a huge set of tax breaks every year.
Even though it's been there forever?
Yes.
But isn't the idea that it'll keep them here as opposed to...
No, they're not going to go anywhere else. How can they pick up that plant and leave? They can't.
The hot exemption of the moment is for a new liquefied natural gas company, Driftwood LNG, planning a terminal in Lake Charles.
Along this stretch here, between the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway and the opposite shore mouth of the industrial canal.
For this, says electrician Heather Ames,
we gave away potentially the largest tax exemption in the history of the United States.
To try to reverse the decision, Ames joined forces with schoolteacher Elizabeth Long, a Republican, and Democrat Georgina Graves.
No documents were provided for the public to see, not online or at the meeting itself.
And the fact that we were not allowed that information and had to read in the paper that $2 billion was gone, people are very upset.
We've been insulted.
Insulted how?
Libtards, like you're libtards, you don't know what you're talking about. We should be thankful for the amount of jobs that these industries are blessing you with.
But at the cost of as much as $2 billion in taxes.
Taxes that then our schools lose, our roads lose, our children lose.
But, says Chamber of Commerce President George Swift, the parish wins because of the new jobs, and not just jobs at the plant.
About 7,300 construction workers will be in the area building the plant for 4 or 5 years.
But how many from the parish itself?
There are absolutely no stipulations that anybody has to come from Calcasieu Parish or the state of Louisiana.
At a trailer park housing construction workers on other projects, license plates from Texas, Alabama, South Dakota, Alaska.
Wherever they're from, they're going to be buying things locally, gasoline, food, all of that, and then the permanent jobs are created, and that's where we get the long-term growth for the area.
And how many long-term jobs?
Their initial application was for 300 permanent, and then the application showed 200 for jobs, permanent jobs.
Which makes the math pretty easy. $2 billion in local property tax relief, 200 jobs, $10 million a job. But wait a minute. Under Louisiana's new governor, John Bel Edwards, 3 local governing bodies now decide. And they approved this deal. But that's because, says Elizabeth Long,
the Chamber of Southwest Louisiana told 3 governmental entities what they were going to do.
To what extent were you involved with the 3 entities that had to approve and did approve this project.
We are the facilitator for the projects. We want the projects to come to our regions.
The bottom line to the Chamber's George Swift:
do we grant the tax exemption and get the industries and the jobs, or do we get nothing?
But if you have the ports, the pipelines, the product, natural gas, why didn't you at least try to drive a harder bargain?
We do have all the resources, but there's a lot of competition all over the United States.
Driftwood's Texas-based parent company declined our interview request, but did issue a statement that the project would generate more than $700 million in sales taxes the first 10 years, and then, after the abatement expires, more than $100 million a year in property taxes. But a key question: would the company really not have come without the exemptions? Surgeon Alan Hinton, a lifelong Republican, doubts it.
Industries want to be in this area because of the ship channel, the pipelines, the rail system, and the interstate system. And people here are willing to accept big, heavy industry in their backyard.
Bridget Hinton, an engineer, manages her husband's practice.
We ran our own business for over 11 years. We had approximately 9 employees, and we didn't get a tax exemption.
I'm astounded that this program has been going on for 80 years under the radar.
No idea that that much money was being given away. It just takes a while for people to open their eyes.
My eyes were open.
How big is this facility? Approximately 3 miles long and extends back another 1.5 miles to the Mississippi River.
In East Baton Rouge, Edgar Cage is in the business of opening eyes as well. Consider ExxonMobil, the biggest taxpayer in the parish and the largest tax break beneficiary, receiving more than 200 exemptions over the past 2 decades. Recently, the company applied for 2 more, retroactively, for projects completed in 2017.
And exemption is the incentive to bring either new business here or for existing company to expand. It's something put in place to change behavior. If the behavior has already happened, it's then not an exemption, it's a gift.
Moreover, Cage's group, Together Louisiana, found that despite all those tax exemptions, ExxonMobil's Baton Rouge facilities collectively lost more than 2,000 jobs.
We're not against ExxonMobil. They have fiduciary responsibility to reduce business costs as low as possible. But when they are exempted from paying property taxes, I have to pay more, and small businesses have to pay more.
Meanwhile, just blocks from the refinery,
this community has been forgotten. It's been neglected.
But I think a lot of people driving through here would be thinking, you know, it's the culture of the place. What could ExxonMobil do to make things better?
If more money is being put into school, put into workforce development, these people would have hope. These people would have opportunity.
ExxonMobil's response is that it contributes about $4 million to the community each year through grants and employee matching gifts.
The next item on the agenda is the ITEP application for ExxonMobil Corporation.
But this January, arguments like Cage's carried the day.
Please vote.
The local school board, strapped for cash, rejected the tax breaks.
The motion failed.
ExxonMobil blamed what it called confusion among local elected officials inundated with misinformation from activist groups.
I think it was a tremendously negative signal not only to Exxon but to other industry, and it just creates doubt as to, is this a good place for industry to locate?
The Chamber of Commerce president doesn't support tax breaks for all energy firms, though.
There was one project that we did not recommend, but the boards ended up approving anyway. It was a solar farm.
A solar farm with 200 construction jobs, but only 1 permanent one.
If it doesn't create jobs, we don't think it fits in the industrial tax exemption criteria.
Heather Ames has a different interpretation of the Chamber's objection.
I think that they're bought and sold by the oil and gas industry, and solar has no place in that.
For the PBS News Hour, economics correspondent Paul Solman reporting from Louisiana.